Well, good morning and welcome again to Glenwood Online. And guess what? Look who's back.
Yay! Hello, I'm back.
You're back. Well, it's lovely to have you back, Rach.
Oh, well, it is lovely to be back.
I'm sure it must be lovely to be back. And you must have noticed that to cope without you, we've had 3 people.
Well, I've got to say, I haven't been watching the services, but I have heard who has been doing, and you have chosen some quality women
We
there.
have.
Fantastic.
I didn't mention that this is your first time back, and actually, frankly, it's your last one as well. No, it's not. No,
and you know, they will have had their work cut out. I know from experience, but yes. I'm sure they've done a fantastic job.
They have done a fantastic job, and they now boss me about as well. So
yes, very good.
It is very
well
good.
done.
So tell us a little bit. You've been on 9 weeks sabbatical.
Yes.
What
yes.
have you done? Where did you go?
So a lot of it has been in Cardiff actually because of the current situations, but I did have the opportunity to go to West Wales.
Oh, nice.
So to my favourite park, Ceredigion.
Lovely.
So that's involved a lot of walking on the coastal paths.
Nice.
And a lot of swimming in the sea. Without a wetsuit,
Without
I've got to say.
wetsuit, I have to say that.
Yeah,
that's impressive.
Absolutely, and just resting, and it's been fantastic actually.
Wonderful.
So
good sunsets.
Beautiful sunsets in Aberyron is the place.
It is the place
for a good sunset. I would definitely.
See any dolphins?
No, still no dolphins.
See,
I think they're hiding every time I come
near.
near.
Out for special people.
One day.
One day. So tell me, daft question a bit, but what did you miss when you were on sabbatical?
Well, I was thinking about this. I got to say I missed this a little bit, Paul.
Did you?
Maybe a little bit.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit.
I loved having the rest and the refreshment. It's a funny time, isn't it? Because I would say I miss the people, but actually at the moment, I'm missing people anyway.
Yeah,
so I don't know. It's a very hard question to answer. But
it is.
Yeah.
And are you grateful for anything coming back?
Coming back?
Yeah.
I'm grateful for my colleagues who have held the fort and done amazing jobs. I haven't actually caught up fully yet, but Dave's still standing, which is good. You can see him there, and he's and I know a lot of the food provision has been carrying on, and
great stuff.
Amazing work. So I'm very
In
grateful.
fact, today actually in this hall, the local health centre did a clinic for children who have the nasal spray.
Brilliant.
To do with flu, I think.
Yeah.
And they phoned up last week and said, could they use the space? And so they've been in for 2 hours. It was great.
Fantastic.
Fantastic. And
that's great, yeah.
what we want
to be partnering
with,
to have that.
Yeah.
And what a great space for people to
space.
Socially distance.
It is. And it's so much tidier as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. People have worked hard. Yeah.
Well, while you've been away, we started a new series called Inspired Imperfection.
That sounds inspired.
It is inspired, and it's about characters in the Old Testament. And we've been looking at different ones. And last week, Paul looked at Habakkuk, did a great job.
Great.
And this week, I'm later on looking at Boaz, but also Naomi and Ruth.
Great.
Into that. So
we'll look forward to that.
And so what's well done.
Yeah.
What's coming up then next?
Yes, so we have another part of the reading of Psalm 139. Yeah. Fantastic psalm.
Yeah,
love that psalm.
Psalm.
And then we have a song. Oh, and I hear it's new this week. A band.
It's a band.
Dave
has rolled out the red carpet.
Yeah, socially distanced.
Distanced. They've been socially distanced.
Risk assessed.
And they did risk assessment with Deb. And they are definitely 2 meters. And the drummer is in
the cage.
The cage.
Probably the safest
place in Cardiff, probably, where he was. So, it's going to be great. And we've got quite a few tracks in the library now, so we're going to use them. So fantastic.
Yeah, fantastic. And then we have a faith story. Nkini is going to share her story. So.
O Lord, you have examined my heart and know everything about me. You know when I sit down or stand up. You know my thoughts even when I'm far away. You made all the delicate inner parts of my body and knit me together in my mother's womb. thank you for making me so wonderfully complex. Your workmanship is marvelous. How well I know it. How precious are your thoughts about me, O God. They cannot be numbered. I can't even count them. They outnumber the grains of sand. And when I wake up, you are still with me.
Let the king of my heart be the mountain where I run, the fountain I drink from. Oh, he is my song. Let the king of my heart be the shadow where I hide, the ransom for my life. Oh, he is my song. Let the king of my heart
If you've been following the Glenwood online services for a few months now, you know that we've been looking at a very important issue, Black Lives Matter, and we said throughout the year we'd come back to it. And I'm thrilled to have Nkini with us, who's one of our leaders in the church, and I've asked her if she would be interviewed about the Black Lives Matter issues and her perception on things. So it's great to have you, Nkini, with us today.
And just to say, Paul, thank you for doing this series. I think it's been really important and very good. Yeah. So thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. So tell people where you grew up and a bit about your parents and how they met and what that was like.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Kenya. My mum is English and my dad Kenyan. They met when my mum went over. So she grew up in England and she trained as a nurse and as a midwife, and then went over to Kenya to do a 2-year volunteering thing with VSO. And so she was placed within the Maasai communities, and had my dad was her translator, and so that's how they met. He was helping her on her field trips.
So ethnically, she was white. How would you describe your father?
Yeah, so my dad is black. Okay. Yeah.
So what was it like when that started happening for your parents? Yeah. Obviously you weren't around, clearly.
That's right.
They've told you.
I think it was difficult for them. It wasn't easy, and I think them making the decision or having conversations about getting married was difficult. And I think in the end it came down to my dad's dad, my granddad, who in official documents his occupation is herdsman. He said black and white were all the same, and he gave them his blessing, and that's what they went with.
That's quite remarkable, actually,
back
then, and quite radical, I would have thought.
Yeah, it was.
And what was it like growing up in Kenya? Were you conscious of race at that point, or when were you conscious of the colour of your skin being, for some people, an issue?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think I know, having lived here for a few years now, I know I'm very much seen as black, and I know if I'd grown up here, that's I would have seen myself as a black person. But growing up in Kenya, I am seen as mixed race. I think people recognise that I've got 2 different cultures and 2 different heritages, and so I'm seen as mixed race. I know on occasions, sometimes in rural communities, I'm called white, Muzungu, white person, which I think isn't something that many people would see me as white here.
Yeah. So in one culture you're viewed as being white, another culture you're viewed as being black, but you're obviously mixed race.
Yeah.
And we've got a photograph here of your friends.
Yes.
We're all
actually my cousins.
Your cousins?
My cousins, that's
right.
So
tell me about what that says about race.
Yeah, I think so this photograph was taken last year when my sister and I were in Kenya, and we met up with my cousins in for a drink, which was a nice evening. But I think one of the things that I'm aware of being mixed race is having a white mum. I've probably aware of the privileges of white privilege and Western privilege, and my cousins are incredible, strong, resilient women, but it's been hard for them, and it's been significantly harder for them than it has for me, and so I feel very aware of the privileges that I've had through my mum.
Yeah. So when you're in the UK, when you're in Wales, are you conscious of your colour?
I think on the whole, I don't really think about my colour, really. I'm aware that what tends to come across is not overt racism that's heavy and aggressive, although I have experienced that. It's more the microaggressions, so they're smaller and a lot more subtler. So that questions like, where are you from? How long have you been here? How long are you staying? When are you leaving? And those sort of questions you get a lot. And on the whole, you know, you can read when it comes across as somebody just generally being interested, but there are times, and often that comes with
an underlying sense that there's
yes,
an underlying racism there
that's
that they're not
right.
even aware of, probably.
Yes, I think that's it.
Yeah.
It's people sometimes don't recognise where that's coming from.
Yes.
Yeah. And
so if there's one thing you'd like to say to the church about this whole area of racism, Black Lives Matters, ethnicity, what would it be, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's around sort of possibly around those microaggressions where and maybe thinking through whether you do ask those questions on where they come from and whether it could be that that's a hint of racism. And I think just beginning to question to question oneself. Some assumptions, that's right, and your prejudices.
Well, I think that's very good, actually, to do that. And we all need to examine ourselves because you can ask a question, and after you've asked it, you thought, why did I ask that question like that? So I think it's been incredibly helpful, and I think you're a very gracious lady, and I've observed you suffering from racism on one occasion, more than one, actually. And you are more gracious than most people would be. So thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you so much, Nkini, for sharing a bit about your story and reminding us all the importance of examining ourselves, actually, and some of those little those microaggressions actually can be easy to not be aware of. So I think it's important that we do examine ourselves in light of that.
We do.
So
we need to challenge it if we can when we see it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think most people, it's unintentional, but they're just not aware, and they need to be pointed out, really.
Yeah.
So,
Great.
I know, but clearly yesterday, we're all conscious that Boris Johnson made a public statement.
He did.
Live on TV, followed straight away by Mark Drayford in Wales. And again, Wales had more restrictions than England, which is a good thing, but clearly they're beginning to clamp down again. And we've got obviously Caerphilly and Bridgend and RCT and other areas which are even more in lockdown, and Cardiff, they say, is going to be soon as well, don't they? And it was quite, listening to it, I watched it and listened to it, as I'm sure you did, and it's a bit heavy, isn't it?
Yeah, it is heavy, and it's hard, isn't it? Because sometimes it can feel like there's no end here. You know, we're sort of entering this phase again, and it can feel oppressive, and it's hard to have hope, I guess.
It is, and while it was hard to hear another 6 months at least, I prefer that.
Yes.
To the optimistic, this will be over in 6 months.
Yes, absolutely.
But nevertheless, I'm sitting there thinking, when is this going to end? And when will it be church gathered together again? So it's difficult, but how do you cope with some things like that?
Well, I mean, today it was on my mind, and I took a walk because that's always good for me. And I love walking by water, so I was walking by the water, and I was listening to my app. And there was a song singing that was based on a prayer by St. Teresa of Avila. And it's a beautiful song. It's quite simple, but it just brought a sort of sense of deep peace, actually. There's no easy answers in these times, but the words of the song or the prayer are, let nothing disturb you, nothing distress you. While all things fade away, God is unchanging. Be patient, for with God in your heart, nothing is lacking. God is enough. And I'm aware they're very easy words to say, not easy words to pray or to mean, but for me, kind of sitting with that, particularly the be patient bit, I think, because that's what we're needing at the moment, isn't it? It's patience and knowing that God is enough, and just to sit with those words and sit with God, that I find that helpful.
Absolutely, and I think it's so great that. Could you read again?
Yeah.
And maybe just a bit slow so people can engage with that. That'd be great.
Okay. Let nothing disturb you, nothing distress you. While all things fade away, God is unchanging. Be patient, For with God in your heart, nothing is lacking. God is enough.
They're great words and a great mantra to have, actually, as we go through
absolutely.
the week. Yeah. So what's going to happen now is going to be a song. Gill Richardson is going to lead us in a song. And then after that, Rachel and I are going to lead you in another prayer, and which will lead into a lovely short reflection. And then off the back of that, I'll just share some thoughts on Boaz and Naomi and Ruth.
Great, lovely.
Upon a life I have not lived, upon a death I did not die, another's life, another's death, I stake my whole eternity. Not on the tears which I have shed, not on the sorrows I have known, another's tears, another's griefs, on these I rest, on these alone. Oh, Jesus, Son of God, I build on what the cross has done for me. There both my life and death I read, my guilt, my pardon, there I see, there I see. Lord, I believe you'll deal with me as one who has thy word believed. I take the gift, Lord, look on me as one who has the gift received. Oh, Jesus, Son of God, I build on what thy cross has done for me. There both my life and death I read, my guilt, my pardon, there I see, there I see. Upon a life I have not lived, upon a death I did not die, another's life, another's death, I stake my whole eternity. Oh, Jesus, Son of God, I build on what the cross has done for me. There both my life and death I read, my guilt, my pardon, there I see, there I see.
Well, thank you, Gill. That was a lovely song. And of course, on Friday was the funeral of Ronnie Lockwood, who said goodbye to
dear
dear Fred, and now dear Ronnie. And strange enough, my keys disappeared at the funeral. I don't know what that was about.
Could be many reasons, actually, Paul. But,
sure, there could be many reasons why my key disappeared. But Rob and I were really touched by the incredible response that it had
absolutely.
to that.
He was loved by many.
He was loved by so many. And they're also disappointed they could only have 30 people at the funeral, and that's so hard.
Yeah, it is hard, but we are going to be having a celebration of his life sometime next year when we're able to, obviously. So that'll be something to look forward to.
It will be, and God willing, it'll be a wonderful new building, completely redecorated.
Absolutely.
Be a great way to honour the man.
Yeah.
And he's going to be sorely missed.
Yes, he will. He will.
Yeah. So, as we move on, we're just going to lead you in a prayer, and as I said before, into a short meditation after that, and then I'll just share some thoughts from Ruth.
Great.
O Lord, you are unwavering in your power,
unflagging in your zeal,
uncompromising in your position.
It is good for us to bow before you.
We pursue our projects,
depart to our private dreams.
Invest in our deepest hopes.
They are fragile and flimsy at best.
At worst, they are devious and destructive.
Either way, they pale before your amazing love.
We gladly affirm, past our own inclinations,
that you will bring well-being among us.
That you intend justice for the vulnerable.
That you command mercy and compassion among us.
Turn us, before the day is out, from our will to yours.
Wean us, before we sleep, from our petty hopes.
Relocate us in your eternal resolve.
That the earth may fully be your realm.
That the world may be filled with your shalom.
That we ourselves may find our true freedom.
In your will being done.
Yours, not ours, is the kingdom,
the power and the glory.
And we are grateful. Amen.
Amen.
When peace like a river attended my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever, my Lord, thou hast taught me to say, it is well, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well. It is well with my soul.
It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. Those are great words and resonate with many of us. And I'll come back to those towards the end of the character we're looking at today, which is Boaz. And he's in the book of Ruth. And Ruth is a fantastic book. It's a short book. It's only 4 chapters. It's an easy read, but there's got some great stories in it. And we're going to look at it. And there are 3 main characters in the book of Ruth. There's Boaz, who's a wealthy landowner. There's Naomi, who is a widower. And there's Ruth, her daughter-in-law, who also is a widower. And it's a story of pain and loss. It's a story that the experience of despair is to be explored and to be shouted about, and it's something that we all will suffer from some time or other. But it's also a story about love and redemption. It's a story about the young and the old, how each life is as valuable no matter what age you are, and fits in with that overarching Psalm 139. We are fearfully and wonderfully made. It's also about the value of human life, the dignity of human life. And I came across this great quote from Van Gogh, the painter. "What am I in the eyes of most people?" he asks. "A nonentity or an oddity or a disagreeable person? Someone who has and will have no position in society. In short, a little lower than the lowest." And all of us, from time to time, have felt an oddity or a nobody. And the book of Ruth, this story we're looking at, tells us that that's not true, that we're each of great value and worth. It hinges around the story of Naomi. And Naomi was someone who lived in Bethlehem. She was married to a farmer. He had land, and she had 2 sons. And they lived off the land. But a great famine hit. And her husband realized he couldn't support his family, so they would emigrate to another country, to Moab. And that's a big thing to do. It's moving to a different culture. I remember at the age of 5 standing on Durham railway station with my little bag in my hand and a small box of sandwiches in another, my sister holding on to me and my mother and father as well. And we're getting on a train to go on a journey to Italy. My parents were emigrating, starting a new life there. And it was an adventure. It was scary. We didn't speak Italian. We didn't know anybody out there. This was the 1960s. There was no email, no Facebook, no Zoom. If you wrote a letter, it took 7 days to get to the UK, and then the reply, it took 7 days to come back. It was a completely different culture. And this is what Naomi and her husband and family did. And they moved there, and then the father dies. And Naomi's grief-stricken. The boys marry Oprah and Ruth, and she lives for 10 years with her daughters-in-law and her sons, and then the sons die. Could you imagine that? Losing your husband and losing your 2 sons. She's a woman in a male society, nobody to look after her. She has to decide what to do. And she decides to go back to Judah, to Bethlehem, where she's from. So she tells her 2 daughters-in-law who are from Moab to stay there with their relatives and be looked after. And Oprah says, fine, but Ruth says, no, I want to come with you. And Naomi argues with her, but in the end, Ruth says these wonderful words. "Don't ask me to leave you or turn back. Wherever you go, I will go. Where you live, I will live. Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God." And so Naomi gives in and says, "Come, follow me." And so she returns. And she returns to Bethlehem. It's probably been about 20 years since she visited or came from there. And as she comes, the people come out and they see her coming in. Is it? Is it not? And they say, "Is this Naomi?" And then come some of the most heart-wrenching words in the Bible. "Don't call me Naomi." Naomi means sweetness, life. "But rather call me Mara. For the Lord has made my life very bitter indeed. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi when the Lord has made me to suffer, and the Almighty has sent such tragedy upon me?" Such grief, such pain. And she began to ask the questions about God. And did God bring this upon her? Of course God didn't bring it upon her. But that's what she felt her experience was. The loss and the grief of losing 3 people that she loved. And many of us will go through a difficult time, and many of us go through challenging times, and we will ask the question, why me? What did I do? Does God love me? Did God cause this? And during COVID, as we lose loved ones in such difficult circumstances, these questions become deeper. And so Naomi has these questions, and she sits with them, and she sits with them. And then Boaz steps into the story. And he's a prince, and he's a wealthy landowner. He also looks after the grain in the threshing floor, and grain is very valuable. He also is a relative of Naomi's husband who's died. And so, Ruth and Naomi need to live. They need the basics of life, water and food. So Ruth does what she can only do. She goes to the fields where they are harvesting. And under Jewish custom, foreigners could go around the outside of the fields and come pick up the corn that was left, the grain that was left, that the farmers just didn't want to pick. And it was hard work, it was backbreaking work, and it was difficult work, and it must have been hard for Ruth. And reminded me of the time when I spoke with my father, and he told me when he was 14 that his father had died from a heart attack. And at that time, his mother was alive, and he had 3 sisters, and he had to finish school early and leave education so that he could get a job to look after his mother and 3 sisters. And he said, we're incredibly poor. He said, so poor that I would follow the coal cart home around the streets. And when the coalman stopped and threw the bag of coal over his bag to deliver, some of the coal would fall out, and he'd quickly grab it, and he'd follow him all day and have a whole armful of coal to go back in the evening to be able to light fires. It was difficult days, and I could sense as he told me he felt shame back then. He shouldn't have done, but he felt shame. And Ruth, I'm sure to an extent, felt a bit of shame as she was going around there. And as she's collecting grain, Boaz arrives, and he asks one of his men, who is this woman? And they tell him that she's a relative of Naomi, the daughter-in-law. And so he says to her, listen, don't go around the outside the fields. You can follow some of the women over there and pick up some of the grain inside the fields. In fact, get yourself some water as well so you don't thirst in the midday sun. And she turns to him, she says, why are you so kind to me? And here's the word, a foreigner. This she did not expect from a Jew, but she was a foreigner. And earlier in the interview with Nkini, she made some quite profound points, and she talked about that idea of microaggression, where all of us, I'm sure, have done it to some degree, where you meet somebody who is different to you, they're of a different colour, and you say, where are you from? And when are you leaving? Because they do not fit into the culture of where you are, and you automatically assume that they're not part of that culture. That's terrible. And Ruth experienced that as a foreigner. But here is Boaz, being incredibly kind. And he says to her, the reason I'm doing it is I've heard how good you've been to your mother-in-law. And I've heard the loss and the grief that you've been through. And so he says to her, come, sit with me, eat food as much as you want, and then you can go into the fields, and I'll tell my men to allow you to do this, pick up as much grain as you want. In fact, she picks up 13 kilograms of grain. It's a huge amount, and it was so generous. And Boaz was both compassionate and generous and kind. He was a wealthy man who shared his wealth with those who needed. And it challenges me. I ask myself, am I generous? If I am generous, do I do it thinking I'm being kind to you in a poor way, or I do it begrudgingly? Or do I give generously out of love? Am I kind to people? Am I gentle with people? And so when Ruth goes home with this 13 kilograms of grain, and Naomi sees that, she says, what's happened? She tells her she's met a man called Boaz, and Naomi's face lights up. He says, Boaz, he's our kinsman redeemer. He's a relative. Now, the kinsman redeemer is a fantastic concept in Jewish culture. And it was that a male relative who, according to various laws, had the privilege or responsibility of looking after another relative who was in trouble or need or danger. And that also involved, if the person was a woman who'd been widowed and had no male support, they were to marry them and to take care of them. And so Boaz, through a number of circumstances, ends up buying the field of Naomi's husband who died. He marries Ruth, and Naomi becomes part of the extended family. And through Boaz's generosity, their lives are turned around. They have been redeemed. They've been restored. They've been liberated. Naomi still had the grief and the loss of her previous husband and the 2 children. And that wouldn't go away for the rest of her life. It would diminish, but it wouldn't go away. But I think now she might say, my life is sweet again. And she might even be able to say, it is well with my soul. And Ruth and Boaz marry, and they have a son called Obed, and he is the grandfather of King David. And the amazing thing is that King David is in the genealogy of Jesus. So is Obed in the genealogy of Jesus, but amazingly so is Ruth, a foreigner, a non-Jew, in this incredible genealogy that leads to Jesus, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. Incredible statement about value and about worth. And of course, Jesus was the ultimate kingsman, redeemer. He came to our world to redeem, to restore, to liberate, to lift up broken people, to restore lives. And he takes lives and he puts them back together again. And like the pot behind me in Kintsugi, he takes something that's broken and mends it with gold thread so it's even more beautiful than the original. That's what the Kingsman Redeemer does. This morning I was privileged to sit at Roddy Lockwood's funeral. And it was a wonderful farewell, and we will have a great celebration when we come into this building in 2021. But as I sat there, I thought about Ronnie, how 45 years ago on Christmas Eve, he turns up at Robin Dye Parsons, a very young Robin Dye Parsons house, with a frozen chicken. And he's invited to stay and to come for Christmas lunch. And he stayed then and never left. And the rest, as they say, is history. But Ronnie had a life that he could never have dreamed of. From the background he came from, he could never have dreamed of this incredible life that he was given. And that was through the love of Robin Dye. And they were acting as kinsman redeemers. They restored his life. They redeemed his life. And that's a wonderful thing to do. And I began to think about people who adopt and people who foster children. They're acting as kinsman redeemers. They are giving an opportunity to children who may never have had the opportunity they're about to be given. And I know that as people who foster, I know that people who adopt, and I'm sure that for Robert and I, there were tough times, there's times of tears, there's times of heartache, but the chance that's being given to those children, to those young people, is remarkable. And that's the story of Jesus, who comes to restore and to liberate and to give value and dignity to human beings. So I think Ruth is a fantastic story, and I pray and hope that you will go and read it for yourselves and discover the truths in it.
Well, thank you, Paul. I have missed hearing you talk, and
sure.
so it was lovely to come back to hear that, and
It
thank
is.
you for sharing your wisdom.
As ever, it's a pleasure. And also, I want to thank, on Thursday just gone, we had our first leadership meeting.
Oh, yes.
Where all the leaders were together for 6 months.
First time in 6 months,
And that's because, obviously, you've been off on sabbatical for 9 weeks. Jane was off on sabbatical, as it turned out, in the end, for 6 months, although she's been working on and off for the past 3 weeks.
Yep.
Norman has been, as we know, very ill for, 4 odd months. So it was fantastic to have these people back, because we have missed you.
Yeah, that's
And
nice.
It is. Dave and I have done a great job by
You
ourselves.
have. I mean, the church is still standing.
Yeah, he's been around and done a great job with us.
Yeah.
And but yeah,
great.
It's good to have you
We're
back.
very grateful for having that time, but it was good to be back, wasn't it?
It is.
Together.
It is good to be back together, and the church is in safer hands.
I'm not going to argue with that.
Not going to argue that, are you? No, not at all. So all that remains for us now is just to remind you folks, the building's going on. Please keep praying for the 80,000, and please keep praying for the building, really, as we move forward. So all that remains now is just to say
Goodbye.
goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
May the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ
and the love of God
and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit
be with us all, now and evermore.
Amen.
Christ be with me, Christ before me, Christ behind me, Christ within me, Christ below me, Christ above me, Christ as I stumble, as I fall down, Christ, as I stand, Christ in the heart of everyone who thinks of me, Christ in the mouth of everyone who speaks of me, Christ in